He started a whole podcast because of it, honestly.
Literally.
And then me, I have to go through the fact that my head coach is Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, fair.
And my GM is Steve Keim. By the way, the only reason that man has a job is because Bill O'Brien is an idiot. That is the only reason.
Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, continuing our positional rankings with the top 10 wide receivers in the 2022 NFL Draft. Before we start the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Boom or Bust Draft. Of course, you can follow all of us as well at Chad_Maxwell for me, at Nick with Sports for Nick, and at Pickens Spreads for Donnie. We're on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, so make sure you check those out and rate us 5 stars, and check out the merch store. Also, Nick Merriam, who has been going through a lot recently. Carson Wentz is now the Washington Commanders quarterback, if you have not heard. Nick was so upset by that he decided to cheat on us and start his own podcast called the Give Me 2 Years and I'll Name It podcast.
Yeah, what the heck, man?
First episode is out. Make sure you guys go check it out. But it's all about, if you're a Washington Commanders fan, which I know a lot of our listeners are, go check it out because he gives insight on this, and he is going through it like you guys are too. So you'll be there. It's like a therapy session. It's a therapy session for all Washington Commanders fans. So make sure you guys check that out.
It's a therapy session for me too. Yeah.
So let's start off our top 10 receivers, and Nick, you can start us off with our number 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir out of Boise State had a really surprising combine, even for me, a guy who I think I really liked, early looking at his tape. I mean, this is a guy with a lot of production, has excellent ability at the catch point. I think more than just his hands. I think he's got good body positioning. I think he's physical downfield. He just has some unreal catches on tape. And I know we're not, like the biggest pro, possession downfield receivers with a lot of production at lower levels, he's Mountain West Conference type guy. But, he put on some weight. He's at 196 now, 6 foot, good size. I had written down 4.48 for his 40. And I was like, but it could be slower. I might be being optimistic. Goes and runs a 4.43 at the combine. Now I know all of these guys are going to probably be like, oh, he ran faster than we thought because we have our theories about what the 40-yard times were like at this year's combine. But let's not completely get into it. Beyond that, the guy I think after the catch, I don't think he's super shifty. He clearly has better speed than I think initially people thought. Is a tough runner. I think he's hard to bring down. He has ability to slip tackles. He's sudden when he steps on his routes. He's a guy that they will keep not just on the outside. He plays a good amount of slots because he can run those more intricate routes. Not the quickest, shiftiest type guy, but everything else for him I think has kind of come together. He does have to work, I think, a lot to get off the scrimmage. He's not the best with his release, but he's a punt returner. That translates from his athleticism. He's got instincts for finding space after the catch. He's one of the best at catching the ball and then turning upfield quickly after the catch. And I think, the thing that hurts me for him is just the fact that he's a possession receiver who played in the Mountain West Conference. But from a production standpoint and from some of the stuff you see from him on tape, it is one of the guys that, something I've learned from now watching high school players a lot is when you see players from states like New York or places where the high school competition is not as great, you have to be clearly one of the best players on the field. And for me, when I watch Khalil Shakir at Boise State, I think he's clearly dominating the competition. He's one of the best players on the field for them. And for me, that's going to translate to a guy that I would take, in the second half of the second round probably, and expect to be able to step in pretty quickly and be a number 2 receiver at the next level.
Up next on our list, we need to talk about this because when I last talked about this, I was saying before, just throw that out the window. Just throw it all out the window. Skyy Moore, the Western Michigan wide receiver, coming in our list at number 9. I said he was faster than Ruggs. I don't know what I was on, but I was on something big. I was on something really big. Listen, go ahead.
Can I just say, I do think you're right in that his acceleration might be the best.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, his acceleration is very good, but when it comes to pure speed, he's a 4.3 runner. He's not Ruggs, he's not Waddle, but just ignore what I said. That Donnie is in the past.
He actually ran a 4.41. Actually,
Oh,
look at it right
okay,
now.
Okay, just put salt in the wound, Max. Okay, just
I'm
put more
sorry.
salt in the wound. Okay.
I was looking at it.
Yep. Just
You miss
rub
all the
it in
shots
there.
you don't take, Donnie.
Yeah.
Exactly. I appreciate the hot take.
I missed every shot I took, so it's not that much better. Skyy Moore though, kind of does remind me a little bit of Shakir, of Khalil Shakir, is that he is kind of a possession-ish wide receiver. I think he's a slot only in the NFL. Dominated a pretty weak conference in the Mid-American Conference. However, I will say he really did take that leap once what's his face? The other
Dwayne Eskridge.
Dwayne Eskridge, thank you. Once Dwayne Eskridge left, he really did take that leap as the number one guy, which I really did like to see. Because whenever I was watching Dwayne Eskridge last year, I kept seeing this guy. I was like, who is this guy? Like, he just kind of keeps flashing off my screen a little bit. And it was Skyy Moore. He's a possession slot guy who's going to catch everything. He's an okay route runner. He's a okay athlete. I mean, not okay. He's a good athlete. He's a slot-only guy, though, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of that. But if you're talking about a later-round wide receiver, you're going to get value with this guy, and maybe in the second round. And honestly, this wide receiver class got a lot better over the year. Like, that's something I do want to talk about real quick. Before the season started, this wide receiver class, it wasn't very good. But as the year went on, and after the combine, after all this, the wide receiver class has gone a lot better. I think it's not as top heavy as it was last year.
Yeah.
But the depth, it might have similar depth to last year. Like that's what you're kind of looking at. Like I think Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle. Like if everyone's combining it, probably a better prospect than some of the top guys on this list. But the depth is there for this wide receiver class, and I always prefer depth over top heavy in drafts because that means you can get good value later in the round. So this is another guy you can get possibly late round 2, maybe early round 3, and you're gonna get a good slot wide receiver.
All right, so the next guy we got on this list is George Pickens from Georgia, and I think once upon a time, and even last year before he tore his ACL, even during the ACL, some of us thought that if this guy could come in and play a good amount at Georgia this year, that he would have a shot at being one of the top 2 wide receivers off this board. I think for a lot of us, well, at this time last year, Olave, I believe, still maybe, well, I guess he would have had it declared at this point, but we had some thoughts that he would be in the draft, so he wasn't really on our list, but we kind of had Garrett Wilson and George Pickens penciled in as our top 2 guys at this point. Pickens obviously goes and tears his ACL, not great. He has come back. He's lost a little bit of weight. I think, in terms of speed and explosiveness thing, it is a bit of a question mark because he's a bigger guy. He's more of a guy we've seen kind of, again, one of these downfield possession types. But he did rely a little bit on his release, quickness, kind of ability to win off the ball, using his legs, using that athleticism to get downfield and ahead of defenders. And that was a concern with his ACL. And I think to a degree we did see it a little bit when he came back, although he just didn't really get a lot of targets. He didn't play as much as you would hoped for a guy who on frankly a Georgia offense that, has good receiver talent, but not excellent. They were throwing the ball to their tight ends a lot. I think that you would have liked to see a little more from him coming back, but we did see some flashes and some of the stuff that we saw initially from him when he was healthy. He comes back, and it looked like, and this is one of these guys who ran a 4.3s, and then they went back and they edited his time, and it's a 4.47, which I don't think was a terrible 40 time for him, actually. I was hoping he was going to break the 4.5 mark. When I saw the 4.3s initially, I was like, wow, all right, well, but obviously 4.47 is probably close to what we expected. Has some spectacular contested catches downfield. A guy who will fight hard after the catch. He has really, really good footwork. He does look quick to me still post surgery. I don't think it has affected him a whole lot. I think he took his time coming back from the surgery, which was smart. He didn't really need to rush it going back into college and play as much as he needed. He just needed to make sure that his athleticism could eventually become what he had before. And I think his above average size, his elite body control, his smooth route running, his technical skill when getting open, I think he leverages space really well. This is a guy that has the ability, I think, to be kind of an all-around receiver at the next level and has the ceiling of a wide receiver 1. There just are question marks about his injury. There's question marks about his production. The guy never really had a big productive season in college. It's just been these flashes here and there. It's almost as if Kayshon Boutte were to enter the draft this year but also had an injury. That was obviously he's had injuries, but a more concerning injury than that of an ACL. that is going to drop this guy into the second round. But I think whoever takes Pickens is going to have this kind of variance of a guy who either might not, quite frankly, because maybe he just isn't quick enough to play at the NFL level, or he might be a wide receiver one. And I think it's an interesting discussion that you're going to see a lot of teams have. I could see him falling anywhere from really a late first round pick to somewhere in the third round, just because there are teams that could fall in love with this guy, and I think there are teams that get scared of him just because of the injury.
So number 7 on our list is my guy, Penn State wide receiver Jahan Dotson, who I have as wide receiver 6 right now. And this guy was the entire Penn State offense last year. Like, coming from a Penn State fan who watched every game, like, there were so many times where Sean Clifford would just throw that ball up, and it was basically like, when you play jackpot, you just throw the ball up and whoever catches it, wins. That's basically what the Penn State offense was last year. And time after time, Jahan Dotson came down with that football, and he made Sean Clifford honestly look a lot better than he actually played last year. So like I said before, like, he's 5'11", so he's not a big receiver, 5'11", 178. Not necessarily like the most physically imposing, like, say, a George Pickens or a Treylon Burks or anyone else in this class, Christian Watson, but he's going to go up and get it, man. And he makes some spectacular catches on tape that you see, and you don't really expect to see from a guy like Jahan Dotson. He's a very, very good route runner. I think he's a very, very sudden player as well. He's a really good, I think it would be a really good slot receiver. I don't know if he can play on the outside, but you put him in the slot with his shiftiness, really big catch radius too. He's going to be a quarterback's best friend. And I think that's something that you can't really underrate, is that, he's going to get open. And even if you're inaccurate, like Sean Clifford was repeatedly last year, he's going to catch that football. Like, there were times where Jahan Dotson was wide open. All he had to do was lob it to him. And Clifford still made it difficult on Dotson. And honestly, made Dotson's highlight reel a lot better than it honestly could have been. I think after the catch, Dotson is really good. He was a Penn State punt returner too. He kind of acts like that when he, after the catch as well, makes a lot of shifty moves. The downside with him is, again, not the biggest, only 178 pounds. He's got to add a little bit more muscle, and especially against press coverage, which is why I think he needs to play in the slot more, where he's not going to face as much press coverage. Also, his speed, for a smaller-ish receiver, still really good speed, 4.43, but we're not talking about like a blazer here. Like, where this guy will win is with his huge catch radius and also with his really good route running. So I think you get him in a team, play him in the slot. I mean, he's going to be a very good receiver, and I'd probably take him, if not late first round, early second round.
Up next on the list, we have the best wide receiver in this class, actually, Christian Watson, the wide receiver from North Dakota State. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? I never really heard of him. That's because he does play in North Dakota State, so it is a little bit of a cupcake conference, to say the least. But Max, real quick, I want you to answer me this question real quick. What was his athletic score?
9.98.
99.8 athletic score. And how big is he, Max? What's his size?
6'4", which is factored in, Donnie, too. The size is factored into the score.
And I just want to say this real quick. One more question, and I'll continue. What was his 40 time?
4.36, right?
4.34, but close enough,
Okay.
close enough. Christian Watson, to me, has one of the highest ceilings of any wide receiver in this draft. When you look at a guy like this, he's huge. He's athletic. He's just explosive. He's amazing after the catch. Heck, he's even played some snaps at running back for North Dakota State. It's not often, but he did it. Currently, he's my wide receiver 5 ahead of Chris Olave. Listen, man, he doesn't have
not the best receiver in the class, like you said then.
Well, in my heart he is. In my heart he is. But I have to keep it fair for the rest of the people up top. But Watson's clearly the best in the class. But no. Listen, man, I think Christian Watson's better than Chris Olave. I'm the only one on this podcast here that thinks that. Listen, man, like, I know Olave has the higher ceiling. Olave has the higher floor. I'm taking the swing for the fences with Christian Watson. Like, when you look at this guy, he has the potential to be a wide receiver 1+. He has the potential of a top 8, maybe top 5 wide receiver in the league with how freaky athletic he is. He shows great flashes of being a route runner. He catches everything. He's a great contested catcher. He might be the best yak receiver in this draft. There was a legit argument for that. I wouldn't put him number 1, but I would say he's pretty dang close to it. What are the downsides? He never had crazy production. I blame the offense because they're so run heavy, and he never really had the opportunity to do it that much. He wasn't Trey Lance's number one guy, but he was also a little bit younger when that was going on. I believe he was a redshirt sophomore, and he didn't really kind of catch on my radar until 2 years ago, and then this year as well when Trey Lance wasn't playing. So that's the only downside. Doesn't have insane production, and he plays cupcakes. Outside of that, he shows elite flashes of being an amazing route runner. He's a great contested catcher. He's the most athletic wide receiver in this draft. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, insane yak. He's a first-round pick to me, and I don't think that discussion of him not being a first-round pick should be closed after that combine.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. But you mentioned him before. Our number 5 receiver in this class is Chris Olave, the Ohio State wide receiver, who I really like, man. And Chris Olave, poor Chris Olave, man. I mean, we were talking about this guy's potential wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 after he ran the 40, because he ran, what was it, a 4.26 unofficial?
It was a 4.26, and it just got.
They got screwed. We're like, we knew he was fast. We're like, holy crap, man. And then the official time came out, and it was a 4.39, which is a significant difference.
It's not bad, but he still was slower than his teammate.
No, exactly.
We were having wide receiver 1 discussions briefly.
Yeah, we were like, dude, what? We're like, wait a minute.
That was the
here.
fastest rise and fall I've ever seen from a prospect.
It was. We're like, holy crap, wide receiver 1, and then we're like, okay, maybe not. Okay, back to where he was. My favorite thing about that was, Garrett Wilson ran a 4.37 unofficial, and Olave ran a 4.26. We're like, dude, Olave is way faster. And then ends up Garrett Wilson 4.38, Chris Olave 4.39. Like, that is a huge jump.
Good job, time people. Good job.
Yeah, they really screwed.
It's really bad.
That's terrible.
What really was bad too is that he didn't run a second 40 because he was like, dude, 4.26, hell yeah, I'm done. And then they're like, no, okay, actually it's 4.39. Maybe if he got another 40, he would have been a little bit better, but still really fast, and that really shows up as a deep receiver. And that's what he was at Ohio State a lot, especially with Justin Fields, man. I mean, he would go intermediate, deep, just a really good route runner to those two levels as well. And he's got enough speed to do that. Like, I know we're saying, 4.39, like we're kind of like scoffing at it. That's because we thought this guy was going to be one of the fastest players we've ever seen. Ended up being still 4.39, very, very fast for the position. He's pretty sure-handed too. You know, he doesn't really drop a lot on his tape. Now, the downside with Chris Olave is that he's a little small. You know, he's 6'1", only 187 pounds. That shows up a lot in that he is nothing after the catch. Like, he literally does not offer much at all after the catch. Doesn't really break a lot of tackles on tape, maybe because of that slender frame. So maybe if you add a little bit of weight at the next level. And, you know, it's hard to say this is a negative for Chris Olave, but you can say, hey, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Garrett Wilson were above him on the depth chart, you would say, this year. So when you're comparing, I know it's saying, you know, Garrett Wilson, who's arguably going to be wide receiver 1. I'm not going to spoil that yet. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, who took number 1 overall in our all-college mock draft. Like, it's tough to say, like, oh, you're third fiddle to them. But still, you know, it says a lot that C.J. Stroud he wasn't his favorite target this year. So after the catch, I don't think Chris Olave is very good. He's not a very physical player, but he's fast. He's a really, really good route runner. He's a guy that's going to win deep. Will he be a number 1 receiver? No, I don't think he will. I think he'll be a number 2 receiver, but he is one of the safest bets. I think he is probably the safest bet to at least be good at the next level, which I don't think you can say for Christian Watson as much. So Christian Watson, for sure. Watson probably has the highest ceiling in this draft. Chris Olave, one of the higher floors, I would say, in this draft, and that matters a lot for me. Also,
something he didn't mention, terrible contested catcher, but that's okay because he's a great deep. Yeah, so it won't really matter that much.
Yeah, not a great custom situations either. Yeah, that goes back to the physicality thing for him.
Yeah.
Speaking of great deep threats, Jameson Williams checks in at number 3 on our list, the guy from Alabama. Let's just start with the negatives really quick for him. Thin frame, 6'2", 179 he weighs in. Now, that could be a little bit because you lose a good amount of weight in your quads when you tear your ACL. And that is really the biggest negative for him, is that he tore his ACL in the national championship game, as most of you saw. Now, this is an injury that we just talked about with Pickens. It's scary, I think, for teams. I think it's a lot less scary than it used to be, especially when we're talking about a guy who kind of his gear is just that he's fast, right? I don't think his quickness, although it's important for any receiver, is as important as most receivers because this guy is going to be a deep threat. He was used in kind of the Jalen Waddle fashion for Alabama this year. A lot of shallow crossers, a lot of go routes, gave him some jet sweeps, used his speed to their advantage as much as they could, but he's not as shifty as Jalen Waddle. He might be faster, though, I think. He's definitely going to run in the 4.3s if he was able to run a 40 time. He's not going to. I don't know. We're definitely not going to see it at the pro day, so I don't know if he'll, run one, this summer. It's like late this summer. Who knows? There's a chance the guy's not ready to play this season or early in the season. We'll see how that goes. But he's a guy who won from the outside, won the slot. I think he's very good off of his release, very quick, elite acceleration, up there with Skyy Moore in this draft. Used in motion a lot, a guy that will be used to kind of doing that at the next level because NFL teams are going to ask him to run motion as well. Knows how to attack off-balance corners with his route running intricacies. He's a guy that because he can accelerate, if he gets a corner turned a certain way, he can use his acceleration to then put you out of balance because he knows you've turned one direction, he can attack your other shoulder, and you just don't see acceleration from guys like you see from this guy a whole lot, even in the NFL level. So that's going to automatically give you some sort of floor, allowing him to branch off his route tree that teams are going to have to prepare for that. I think his underrated body control, has good hands, can make some sideline grabs. Speed has helped his yards after the catch. He did need to add weight to his frame. I think even with this low weight, that could just be because of his ACL tear. I think he is skinny. I don't really think he'd be much bigger than, like 187, like Garrett or Chris Olave size, if he was his normal weight. My comp for him is Deshaun Jackson. I think this guy looks a lot like Deshaun Jackson to me. I don't think he's going to be returning punts at the next level because I think that's something that's been taken away from the best receivers. You don't want to have them do that as much. But I do think that he can have that type of deep threat impact for an offense if the need checks out. And because of that, Deshaun Jackson's type player that I would take top 20 in the draft. I still think this guy is a top 20 pick for me.
Fair. But here's the question real quick before we continue. Do you think that if the medicals behind the scenes aren't as great as we would have wanted and he won't be able to start week 1, is there a chance he could fall out of the first round?
I mean, if it's 1 or 2 games, I don't really, I mean, the question has to be, is it he wants to take the games off so that he's 100% when he first steps on the field, or is it legitimately he is fighting to just be on the field? Which is unfortunately something we never really know. No teams really reveal that much about the injuries. No one's outwardly talking about it. There's a gamble here, you're not really going to know until you see this guy in your building, which I think, quite frankly, probably will end up pushing him out of the top 20 because teams are going to get scared of it. I mean, would it surprise me if he fell out of the first round? Yeah, because I think teams at the back end, like Kansas City and Green Bay, at that point, you're kind of looking at this type of player and you're going, dang, this is such a value. If you hit on that type of player with the quarterback you have at that point in the draft, it's such a home run that you can't pass on it. I even think a team like Miami at that point, Detroit is looking for receivers as well. There's just too many teams that need receivers at the back end of the first round. I'm really very surprised if he fell out of the first round.
There are also reports that came out too about Jameson Williams that he is very much ahead of schedule right now. I saw Adam Schefter. That's good to hear. Adam Schefter posted a video of a workout. He said, I talked to his trainer whenever. He said he is really ahead of schedule. So I don't think he's definitely not going to be able to work out his pro day, obviously, but he should be ready to go, if not training camp, very soon, and probably even play a little preseason hopefully too. So he seems to be very ahead of schedule due to all the reports that we're seeing.
That's good to hear. Back to the list. Sorry, got off topic real quick. Number 3, Treylon Burks, the wide receiver from Arkansas. Feels like everybody has this guy wide receiver 1, and I thought there was a case for it, and then the combine happened, and I don't know how you can still say this guy's wide receiver 1. Listen, he wasn't bad at the combine. It's not like he pulled a David Bell, which, by the way, you're probably wondering where he's at on this list. Go check his athletics score out, and then you'll know why he's not on this list. But no, Treylon Burks, he didn't disappoint. He was a 64, 5?
Yeah, 61, yeah.
Yeah, 61% athlete. That's not terrible. It's not great. It's not ideal from what you thought he could have been. Mm-hmm. He was telling us this entire time, oh, I'm going to run a 4.3. And oh, okay, so you're DK Metcalf. And then he goes out and runs a 4.55. And I'm like, okay, come on, dude. What was that? Come on, man.
It
That was
almost
so
looks worse
disappointing.
just that he said that and it just didn't.
Yeah, it's all about
And he wasn't even
expectation.
close to it.
It was a decent combine. It was just expectations were through the roof for this guy, which is
Yeah, and he did it to himself. So
Yeah, he fed into it a little bit.
yeah, you shouldn't have said anything. But either way, I still think you're an easy top 16, definitely first half pick. When you look at this guy, it's the just special yak ability that you just don't really see with wide receivers. Like I'm talking AJ Brown and Deebo Samuel type. Yeah, maybe not quite on Deebo's level because Deebo's yak. Like we've never seen that before. But like that's the kind of what you're looking at. Like maybe baby AJ Brown struggles with creating separation a lot. Maybe one of the worst separators out of everybody on this top 10 list. Like he cannot create separation, but everything else great at. He has good hands. He has great yak. He's a good athlete. Not as good as we thought, but on the tape, it still shows he has great size, and he is the definition of a number one. And if a team wants to use that versatility, which if they draft him, they should. You should be using this versatility. He's going to be one heck of a football player. Is he ever going to be Deebo Samuel? Absolutely not. Stop comparing him to Deebo. Like, listen, like he might be more athletic than Deebo, or at least close to it. He's just not Deebo, man. Just stop comparing him to Deebo. Like Deebo's yak. Like we've never seen anything like this before.
Right.
Like a guy who's been able to do what he did last year. I would say he's more AJ Brown. And that's still a great wide receiver. Like AJ Brown's still a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And I think that's what Treylon Burks can be. He can be a similar guy to AJ Brown if he can somehow learn how to create more separation when running his routes. Because I don't think his release is the worst thing ever. I think it's just he can't create separation when he's actually running the routes. If he can improve on that, he could easily be the best wide receiver in this class. But because of how disappointing his combine was, I'm going to reference it. It wasn't bad. It was just really disappointing. Considering how disappointing it was and how the two guys ahead of him, I just think are better athletes. And maybe one of them has a higher ceiling and one of them definitely has the higher floor. I'm going to take my chance on those two guys, but I still think Treylon Burks is a top half of a first-round pick.
It's fair enough. So our number 2 receiver in this class is Drake London, the wide receiver out of USC. So one of the biggest things that we said about Drake London in our video, if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. We said, hey, this guy's only 210 pounds at 6'5". He was listed at. Came into the combine, was an inch shorter, 6'4", which is not surprising. Teams lie about their heights all the time. But came into the combine. Yeah, Jalen Tolbert. Came into the combine, though, at 219 pounds. And it's like, all right, man, now we're talking. Like, that's the kind of size that you want to see with Drake London. And I kept saying in our scouting report video, I said, hey, this guy needs to commit to being a big receiver. And at 6'4", 210 pounds, you're not really at that level yet. Which I think one of the weaknesses that I have for Christian Watson, I hate to go back, is that he's big, but he's not big. He's only 205 pounds at 6'4", so he's not as big. Drake London is committing to being that bigger receiver. Now, obviously, Drake London is not the athlete that Christian Watson is. In fact, his biggest knock, and maybe his only knock, is that he's not very fast at all. Like, he didn't run in the combine, obviously, because he broke his ankle against Arizona. I want to say, I forgot which team they were playing. Suffered a season-ending broken ankle in October, though, and didn't run at the combine. I think he will run his pro day, is what people have been saying. If he did run at the combine, he's 100% healthy. Like, we could be talking like a 4.6 that we're talking about for Drake London. And a lot of people are like, oh, screw that. I don't want that. You got to know where he wins, though. He's a man among boys. He dominates them physically. He played on the USC basketball team, and that's where he really plays in the NFL and in college football, too, is that he's a very physical player, dominated with the smaller corners in the Pac-12, and he doesn't really get open as much, mainly because of his speed. I actually think he's a pretty decent route runner for his size, but the speed holds him back from being a good separator. But still, you just throw it up to him, man. He's going to go get it, and he's probably the best at contested catches in this class. So you just throw it up to Drake London, who's 6'4", 219, is committing to being a bigger receiver. Something I didn't mention either, very good after the catch. Like, this guy can break some tackles and be shifty after the catch. So I think Drake London, there's a lot of things to love about him. The only thing to not love about him, the only weakness, and it's a pretty major one, is his speed. But still, that's not where he's won in college. That won't be where he wins in the NFL. I think he's a true number 1 receiver in the NFL.
I don't think his speed is 4.6.
I think it will. He's slower than Treylon Burks. I know that for sure. He ran a 4.55.
I don't know. I think he's a 4.5
I think
runner.
it's slower.
I think he's slower than Treylon Burks, dude. He's slower than Treylon Burks.
On tape, yes, but like when it comes to the 40, I don't think he'd run force. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. However, I do want to ask you guys this real quick. If Drake London never got hurt and he had the season that he was projecting to have, because we've talked about this throughout the entire draft season, how the Jacksonville should go after an offensive guy, but there's just none really worth taking. If Drake London never broke his ankle and had the season he was projected to have, would he go number one, or would he have an argument to go number one? Overall, like we say, like they need offensive talent, and apparently they like him a lot, even with this broken ankle.
I'm not really factoring the ankle in too. I would say no, but that's just me. I'm not factoring the ankle injury too much into this.
I'm not either, but I'm just saying if he never broke his ankle, I think he'd be my wide receiver one by a good margin in this draft for sure. And then I would say, like, I think there's a legit chance he could go number one because, like we said in the past, guys like Kyle Pitts and Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase would all go number one in this draft. And I think if Drake London had the season he was projected to have, I think he's in, maybe not on that tier, but he's right next to him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's just me. I don't know. But no, let's get back. I'm getting off topic so much in this video.
He is. He still is.
Yeah.
I further confirmed that, by the way. That's the thing.
Oh boy, that'll be crazy.
I'm ready for it.
I think he's not the favorite though. I think the Malik Willis stuff is more real than that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, wide receiver one. We did a video on this guy, by the way, so if you wanna just go check it out. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver one. This is your high floor wide receiver. He does have a high ceiling, but I don't think it's quite as high as some guys like, I don't know, Watson, maybe Burks, London as well. Like, maybe not quite that high. But if this guy doesn't work in the NFL, I'll be very surprised because he has that floor of, I would say, a top 20, 25 wide receiver, I would say. And that's something that you would really want on your team because more teams want more weapons. Great route runner, maybe the best separator in this class. Struggles with contested catching, but did improve it a lot this year. He had a bad release, and then he improved it this year. Really good athlete, makes some of the best football moves of any wide receiver in this class. He might be the best yak receiver in this draft, behind, I would say, Wan'Dale Robinson. That's what I would say.
Okay, yeah,
that's what I would say. I think there's a debate as well. One of the most athletic in this class as well. Tested as a 96% athlete, 97, somewhere in the high 90s, mid to high 90s. Max can check it out.
I'm checking it right now. I actually think it might be a little lower than that, but
I know it's in the 90s. I know it's in the 90s. So.
Actually, 77%. Sorry, Tommy.
What?
Yeah, sorry. Still, it's pretty good. The only his shuttle wasn't good, and his size is not great.
Once again, Donnie not knowing anything.
That's still pretty. His 40 was great though. His 40 was fantastic.
Yeah, but
just keep taking shots, Donnie. We'll hit eventually.
I'll be smart. I'll be smart one day. So this is just your high floor wide receiver who's an elite route runner. He's improved in the things he struggled with the most. He improved on a ton from last year. So that's why I think he's the clear-cut wide receiver one. Like I said earlier, I thought Treylon Burks maybe had a small debate, but after that combine, I'm going to go ahead and say no. This is just, I'm going to keep repeating myself. This is a high-floor wide receiver who has amazing football moves, who's going to, he's a great route runner. He struggles with, I just can't get over the fact of how off I was with that athletic score.
Good. It's like 77.
I wasn't even close. I said 98, and I was up by 20.
He was gonna be up there if it wasn't for his size and shuttle. Yeah. Say that.
I guess
they kind of screwed him a little bit. His size and shuttle kind of screwed him a little bit.
Came in smaller than we thought he would.
Yeah. What is he? 5'11"?
He was 183.
Yeah, 6 foot
smaller than Olave.
Yeah. And also, like, his jumps were okay, too. But his shuttle was bad, and his size was dragged him down a little bit. But his speed was great. 4.38 is, like,
I'm surprised people
way faster.
I'm surprised people aren't questioning his size as much like they did with Devontae Smith. Like, he's not that much bigger than Devontae Smith.
Yeah, Smith is what, 175, right? I think, if I right.
Less 170.
I think 174 is what he weighed in.
174, something like that.
But I think there were rumors he had to like get his weight up to that. Like he was 165 when he showed up.
I saw that
that's
rumor.
Fair, That's fair.
I saw but I mean 4.38 for Garrett Wilson. Like people were saying like 4.5. Like people did not think his speed was that great. 4.38, like that's a phenomenal time for him.
Mid 4.4s.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was possible from him. So that was great. Yeah.
And faster than Olave is crazy to me because I thought Olave was the speedster of that group.
Yeah. But no, I'll wrap it up real quick. He's wide receiver one, and I don't think it's relatively close. All right. We're done.
Sure. Poor Donnie. I mean, the relative left score just was tough today, but
today's just been killing me, man. First Skyy Moore, now this. Like I said, Skyy Moore was faster than Waddle, and he runs a 4. I thought he runs in the 4.3, and then Max decides to grab a whole bag of salt and just pour it on every cut on my body and say, no, he ran a 4.41. Like, it needed to be said. I understand that, but it still burns.
I'm sorry. But look, that's what we got for our top 10 wide receivers in the 2022 NFL Draft. Please be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to continue this for every position in the 2022 NFL Draft. Make sure to turn on notifications. Follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at BoomerBustDraft. Follow all of us personally, too, at Chad_Maxwell for me, at Pickens for Donnie, at Nick with Sports for Nick. Check out Nick's podcast as well, the Give Me 2 Years and I'll Name It podcast, the Washington Commanders. I love that name so much. We're on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts, and check out the merch store. So for Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.